Hi, I'm Kierra, and today I'm going to respond to Amy with her claim that income inequality has a negative effect on the economy. Her first secondary claim is that a strong middle class directly correlates to a strong economy, and her secondary claim is current policies benefit the wealthy but do not help grow the economy in the long term. So I'm going to respond to the first secondary claim. And basically, income inequality stimulates economic growth in the long run. And you state that the cost of living has gone up and the wages have stayed exactly the same. But Kimberly Amadeo, an economist with 20 plus years of experience, analyzes the COLA, which is helping to tame inflation and provide income to those who need it to keep up with the rising cost of living. And the cost of living, such as houses, transportation, food, gasoline, and many other daily commodities, has to rise in order to stimulate the economy and keep up with the demands of the public. In economics, it's simple. The higher demand, but the same or shorter supply, the higher the price. You also talk about that the wealthy people do not spend money, but they invest it. This is true, but the investment is actually an effective way to long-term economic growth. Alex Brill, a former chief economist at the House Ways and Means Committee, states, when wealthy people save, they defer consumption to the future, allowing our savings to be invested in productive ways that lead to long-term economic growth. I feel that there are some reasoning flaws. You reason that the rising cost of living and the stagnant wages is resulting in a weak economy, but unemployment has decreased from 7.9% to 7.4% as of September 2013. Also, employers added 180,000 jobs since August. The Institute for Supply Management reported that service businesses, which employ about 90% of the American workforce, expanded last month at their fastest pace in nearly 8 years. My response to secondary claim 2 is the proposition that the wealthy hides their actual wealth is a bit far-fetched and is not sufficient for the argument because it seems to speculate very few cases that have been in the news. I also do not understand how this relates to the claims that programs only benefit the wealthy. Also, you fail to talk about the programs that the government has cut, specifically, and how it relates to the wealthy paying less taxes. In the claim that corporations have purchased politicians, while this may be true, the current politicians are working to raise the minimum wage and enact other programs such as Obamacare, which helps the middle class with their health insurance. Again, I'm not sure how this relates to a weakening economy. I think your last point in the speech seemed to lead to a new claim of fact that income inequality weakens the government, which is actually what you stated. In conclusion, I believe that this argument has some holes, and inequality in the economy is just part of our country that keeps it functioning. Thank you.
What did you do this?
All right, Kierra, the strongest part of the arguments are the challenges that you make on causality, especially on the first point where you suggest that changes in the cost of living and prices are really a reflection of economic health, and that investment money, in other words, capital that is not taxed or whatever, but it's saved, even though it's not being consumed, actually contributes to growth in the economy. I thought that those were both pretty solid arguments. They could probably be developed a little bit more, especially that second one, which seems to go to the heart of the advocate's original position. I wasn't sure what the argument on unemployment figures means when you were talking about the service industry is expanding. I guess the argument that you're making here is, despite the fact that there is income inequity. We are having a thriving economy, or the economy is beginning to thrive, or it's getting better in some way. And so the notion that as income inequality has gone up, we've had a reduction in the economic health of the rest of the country. I guess that's a counter sign on this particular point, and I think you need to explain that a little bit more clearly. I didn't hear any discussion of the advocates' evidence and reasoning on those particular points, but I thought you presented reasonable counterclaims there. On the second point, you do challenge the relevance of that argument, but I think that your explanation needs to be a little bit clearer. The argument about politicians maybe being bought by people with a lot of money seems to be accepted. Again, I guess you're giving us a countersign here, but if it is true, why are they then paying for or passing laws like raising the minimum wage or Obamacare, which would seem to run counter to the interests of the 1% or the highest group? I guess that's the inference that I'm supposed to draw here, is that although an inequity exists, that inequity is not preventing legislation that would benefit people in these particular categories. I think you, for instance, could show a lot of things that the government is doing to address those kinds of issues, whether or not there is inequity and whether or not politicians are controlled by the wealthy. You could suggest, for instance, there's been vast expansions of medical access, of welfare and food assistance to people who are in dire conditions, and that's been done by the government. And so, that's the function of government. It's not the function necessarily of the wealthy to take care of those things. That's the function of the government, and the government is doing that. The only question then becomes whether or not there's in some impediment because the wealthy are preventing themselves from being taxed in some additional way, that these programs would be more effective. And I think that's another place where an argument about what the advocates said, was there any demonstration that things would be substantially different if the government had more money to spend, or the deficit was lessened? I don't remember that there was an argument about that issue, and that seems to be the way it would apply most to your particular claim. All right, thank you.